Russia is really defined by contradictions, and Russians are very comfortable with contradictions. This is a country, even when it has felt most self-confident, has always felt vulnerable. When it's been most ambitious, it's also very defensively minded. One of the problems with the standard Western approaches to Russia is, for all sorts of historical and cultural reasons, we tend to be compartmentalizers. We like making all sorts of distinctions. In making these distinctions about influence and power, of course, Westerners came up with the whole notion of soft power. One thing you see when you look at what Russians call soft power is there are always harder elements in it. And when you look at diplomacy, which in the mainstream Western conception is about reconciling different interests, reconciling different states, and so on and so forth. The Russians see diplomacy as a means of struggle and pursue it in a very single-minded and multifaceted way to promote their own national interests. We inside the EU have our own norms, our own rules, about what constitutes best practice and even good practice. And when other countries conduct business here, they have to do so according to our rules. Russian business culture has tended to observe rather different rules, not always by design. But to understand why they play by different rules, you again have to go back a bit and understand how the Soviet economy really worked, what happened when it fell apart, and who was able best to exploit that to advantage, to gain wealth and power at home. One thing you see in Russian business, much more than you would see in the EU, is a very close relationship with the state, very collegial, confidential, and even opaque relations, whereas we, of course, put a maximum amount of emphasis on transparency, on protection rather than competition, on patron-client relationships rather than fully open markets, on a close proximity in some domains to the criminal world, because in the Soviet Union, private enterprise was criminal. And so the people who illicitly conducted private enterprise tended to be not just legally criminal, but they acquired a criminal mentality. They, of course, became very prominent when it collapsed. And finally, what you see also in Russian business, particularly business involved abroad, and especially in the energy sector, is a large number of people with intelligence and security backgrounds, with enormous emphasis on the covert, with an enormous instinct for finding vulnerabilities on the other side. There are disciplines that were at the core of the practice of what we used to call the KGB, which have now very explicitly been moved over to the sphere of business, such as active measures, how you influence the perceptions and behavior of your partner, your competitor, your rival. All these things give Russian business, a lot of Russian business anyway, certainly the business, sort of Russian business that worries us, a distinctive flavor and character. Russia and its entire civilizational significance from the West, and particularly from Western liberal democracy and the standards and practices exemplified by the EU. Within Russia itself and its neighborhood is based on the assumption we are distinctive, we are different, we cannot simply dissolve into the rest of Europe. And so history obviously plays here a very explicit role for them.